candid conversations, unfiltered opinions, and humor with Abeg Vex podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again to another great episode. Hi, Mitchell. I have the pleasure of having Mr. Mitchell Levy with me today. So, Mitchell is a global credibility expert, right? Global. Mitchell, how come? Why do we need to be credible? And why do we need experts to help us be credible? Why is that important?
It's a very interesting question. So why do we need to be credible? Let's go back to the really early days.
Right.
When we were living in tribes and dinosaurs were on the earth. You need to be credible because the tribe supports each other. You know, if somebody sees a saber-toothed tiger, they're going to do a call that other people know. They know how to protect each other. If somebody is sleeping through that or not on whatever station, if they're supposed to stay on station, the entire community could be at risk, right? And so credibility there is just having integrity, authenticity to do what you were put into place to do.
Right.
And sleeping on the job could actually result in the death of the entire community. Right. So we're not talking the same thing if we fast forward to today.
Right.
But what we are talking is a lot of what we've been taught, a lot of how people practice. I clump into a term called marketing cookie cutter BS. Marketing cookie cutter, right? We've been taught that more money is better, more product is better, more consumption is better. And the answer or question I'm going to ask you is why? But we're probably getting a little bit too down the chain. To me, when I'm thinking about what's important is being able to look you in the eye, whether or not we're in person, I get to shake your hand or hug you and be able to make a promise.
Right.
And for you to be able to understand that that promise means something to me and that I'll deliver on that. That level of integrity, authenticity, that gives credibility. That level of credibility delivers trust. That level of trust allows you not just to trust in what I say to you, but trust that if you recommend me to somebody else, that I'm going to give them the same level of credibility, of actions, of things that I do.
Right.
And what's happened in the world is, and particularly with AI, is everyone is an expert. And literally, by the way, thought leadership has been democratized. You want to be an expert, you go to GPT and you ask a question and you can give a response that will potentially give you expertise well beyond who you are. So anyone who wants to do that can. So what happens is what's real.
Right.
What's real, what makes sense. We're going back to the type of days where we have word of mouth marketing. And it stems 100% based on credibility of trusting, knowing, and liking the people you're interacting with.
Great answer. So basically, we need credibility to be authentic and to be believed, in a sense.
There we go.
So, Mitchell,
you said a lot shorter than me, so thank you. Thanks for summarizing. I'm a clarity guy, so thanks for bringing clarity to the conversation.
Teamwork, Mitchell. So, why did you get into the space? What attracted you to recognize that there's a credibility issue in the world, right? What made you dedicate your career, your life into this career, and work us through it? Because we'd like to follow you on that journey.
It's a great question. I mean, the concept of me building credibility didn't really start to 2019. And so between 2018 and 2020, I interviewed 500 thought leaders on credibility. It was my Napoleon Hill journey. And prior to that, I've lived a pretty good life, right? I think my first thought of integrity stems back to when my parents got divorced when I was 9.
Mm.
Dad was a helicopter dad, would fly in for, a weekend once a month or every 2 months. And in my words then, pretend to be a father. And I would actually ask myself, what should a father be? What is the role of a father? So that's kind of an integrity question. I think when I first started working after college and B school, one of the taglines I'd often do, because I didn't find it all the time, is say what you do and do what you say.
Right.
That level of integrity. What got me to the credibility thing, to answer your question directly, is in 2005, I've started 20-ish businesses in Silicon Valley. 4 of them have been book publishing companies. We've published over 750 books.
Wow.
And in 2005 is when I started the publishing. What I realized what was happening even then, but really started happening as things went on, is book publishing was becoming democratized. And the problem when any industry gets democratized is a new business model gets introduced.
Right.
Can I tell you what it is?
Yes.
It's really hard to compete against this business model. The business model is called stupid. It's everyone who says, right? And for those, if you're listening only, I'm doing the double quotes. They say they're a publisher,
right,
and they have a business model that they're doing because it's fun, and they will never, ever make money. It's kind of like in the .com days. A lot of companies will say, we'll sell at a loss, we'll make up in volume. Stupid, right? And so I started thinking about that. And in 2019, I go, okay, listen, what's next for Mitchell?
Right.
And one day I was thinking about it, and what I thought is, well, what of the authors I published, what are they looking for? Well, they're looking to publish a book so they could have credibility, so they could speak on more stages and pick up more clients. All right, perfect. What is the definition of credibility? So I went to the dictionary, and I go, that's not right. And then the next morning I woke up and I go, Napoleon Hill interviewed 500 millionaires and published Think and Grow Rich. Mitchell Levy is going to interview 500 thought leaders and publish. Now it's called Credibility Nation. At the time, I had no idea what I'd call it.
So in your interview process, right, 500, that's a lot of people, right? That's a handful, right? In your process of interviewing these leaders, right?
By the way, it's 100. It's 100 handfuls. Just to be clear.
just about. Did anything surprise you in this process? When we're talking about thought leaders, globally or nationally, you name it, we're talking about people that are on certain pedestals in the industry, right? Is there anything that surprised you in interviewing these individuals? Anything like new that you learned that you didn't expect to learn?
Almost everything.
Yeah.
So not just anything, but lots of things. I was shocked. So what I ended up doing is coming up with 10 values of credibility. I was shocked at how many of them are not followed. So let me answer your question in a different way, and then I'll give you the one most important thing. When I first started interviewing, I actually didn't really know what I was going to measure. My undergraduate is in, I'm going to give you terms that are crazy. It's a Bachelor of Science in Stochastic and Deterministic Models of Operational Research.
That's a lot, Mitchell. That's a lot.
It's a lot, right? What I did in my undergrad was I was taught how to model people and systems and improve them, right? And so I didn't actually know what I was going to measure. And in the first 10 interviews, 20-30% came late. One person didn't show, 40% weren't prepared. And I'm like, and I was, by the way, I was mad. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm interviewing you. What do you mean you're coming late and you're not prepared? And then I realized, oh, wait a second. I'm an independent observer, even though I'm actively participating.
Right.
I need to keep track. And so I was, and actually up until that time, I considered that the meeting started when I got in the room. So if I was, on the hour or a couple of minutes late, that's okay. That's when the meeting started. What I realized is how it felt when somebody had spent the time, money, and energy to do a podcast, and somebody doesn't come prepared or doesn't come with their heart. They don't show me who they are, or they don't come on time.
Right.
And so for podcasting, you'll notice when you check your Zoom notes, normally I'm 10 minutes early. I think I got in 7 minutes early. and just hanging around, because being on time when I go to a Zoom meeting is 1 to 2 minutes early.
Right.
If I'm going to a physical meeting, it's 10 to 15 minutes early. It's just being on time means that you are there. You're showing the respect that you're there. So the surprises to me were a lot of, I'll give you a bunch of them and then you can unpack. One, 98% of thought leaders did not have clarity. Okay, that's the biggest surprise. So I'm going to put that on the side. Two, we already know the phrase, but the phrase needs to be changed. The phrase that I first started focusing on was know, like, and trust. But the way credibility works, it's trust, know, like. Because the first thing that needs to happen when you bump into somebody is you have to trust that they're not going to spam you. They're not, that they're the right person to talk to. You don't want to do business with them until you get to know them. Not that you know of them, you actually need to get to know them. And as you get to know them, you also don't want to do business with them unless you like them. And so it was very simple. And probably another surprise, I probably couldn't tell you prior to the interviews the two simple things you need to do to be likable. And so there were a couple surprises, but those are, I think, 3 laid out.
So likable in the sense of relatability, or likable in the sense of basically pandering? Because those are 2 ways you can be likable, right?
Oh.
You come in and you're authentically yourself and you're relatable. It's like, you know what? Yeah, this person is this person. They present well. Or you come in and basically pander to the person, agreeing and hanging on to every word. So which was it?
So I will give you a different definition of likability, but I will say what was interesting is you use the word pandering, and I'm going to say what to me when I hear you say pandering, I think about suck ups.
Exactly that. I was trying to clean it up.
and you know what? I did an article on LinkedIn recently, and it was, is being a suck up a bad thing?
Right.
The answer is not necessarily. And what I'm going to tell you, and I learned this through Marshall Goldsmith, for those of you that have dogs, the biggest suck up in anyone's household is the dog, right? Because when you come home after the end of the day, if you're married, is the first thing you do, you kiss your wife, or you do, no, you're going to go to the dog and pet it. Oh, I love you so much. And how much? Because the dog sucks up to you, right? So it's possible that some form of sucking up is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
I'm going to say likability is 2 things. One is actually doing what you're doing right now. And that is, I call it spreading cred dust. It's sharing the ideas, thoughts, and actions of others.
Okay.
Right? So if you got something out of this episode, then the biggest thing you could do in terms of spreading cred dust is go, you know what? I did an episode on credibility and clarity. You got to watch this Mitchell Levy guy. You got to watch this, right? That's spreading cred dust. It's just basically, and unfortunately, many managers and potentially many doctors, what they end up doing is they say, hey, this is my idea, when it clearly came from somebody else. So giving the ideas, thoughts, and actions of others. The second thing is showing respect.
Okay.
Just coming early, coming prepared, coming with your heart. And if your heart says, I want to listen and say that you're right, I'm not sure I would say that's being a suck up. That's just sort of making sure that both parties, right? I mean, there's some amount of sucking upness that I think is really appropriate in any relationship.
Right.
The biggest issue that if you're running a business, or if you're in the military, or if you're in the medical profession, the higher your title, the more people suck up to you. And that means that you're not always hearing the truth.
Right. So knowing that this does exist, Mitchell, how can a leader, say CEO, CFO, whatever bigger title is there, create an environment where you don't have suck ups? You are going to have people who suck up to you, especially in like a toxic leadership environment. I've seen this a lot where, because of alliances and collisions of sort, people, because they know they have access to, senior leadership, they suck up and they really create very toxic things based on likability, who I get along with, who I like, who I don't like, which can heavily favored incompetency and, discredit competency, right? How can a leader who wants to create an environment that even if the suck upness is there, okay, even if that is there, but they create an environment where people can be honest and open with them, where they get to know the truth, right? As opposed to what this toxic manager who just made up this whole story about somebody simply because their ego was not stroked.
I'll give you a answer with clarity, and then you could ask for more detail.
Okay.
To lead by example.
Okay. I'm asking for more details, please.
So I want to give you a great example. In the United States, decade plus ago, probably 2 decades, Ford Motor Company almost went out of business.
Right.
A CEO by the name of Alan Mulally was brought in. And one of the things he said is, listen, if I don't have visibility, when he'd have all the managers, like 70 managers in a room, if I don't have visibility, how can I know what's going on? Can you guys bring in a chart of all of your goals and whether or not they are simply red, green, or yellow?
Right.
Now, this is as the company had a tremendous amount of loss. And that next meeting, everyone came in and all the numbers were green. And he stands up there and he goes, so wait, we're running out of loss and everything is green. There's something wrong here. So then he talked about, listen, I need to hear the truth. I need you to focus on what's really happening. So I, as CEO, can't help you. Your peers can't help you unless you really tell the truth. At next meeting, one brave soul came in and showed yellow and reds. And as Alan was talking about it, he praised that person for doing what they did and said how important it was and did something to recognize that this person was lifted up. And then as the meetings kept going on, the color chart became much more what it is. And it's a whole lot easier when you're amongst your peers and you're admitting vulnerability. Like everyone was thinking, hey, if I say I'm vulnerable, I'm not doing good, I'm going to get fired. By the way, the answer is if you're working at a place and you're not doing well, you should get fired, right? And particularly if you can't get peers. And if you don't like what you're doing, right, you go somewhere else. If you do love what you do, you should be doing it as a team, not as an individual, right? And so it comes down to leading, walking, talking the talk and walking the talk and being transparent of what you're looking for and making sure that if you're creating a culture of success, that you really want that if the culture is centered around the customer or centered around and fill in the blank, centered around the employee, you want to actually say the words and then actually deliver on those words.
So that is something somebody was honest about, right? And I'm just going to present this example because it happens a lot in corporate America, especially in healthcare, right? That's the industry that I work in. So there's usually this undertone that if you are honest, and that honesty can actually affect the bottom line, right? And which will affect investors, then you are scapegoated in a sense, you have this black ball treatment, right? So how can an organization with a thought leader, right? If a thought leader was one of your 500s, right? And in asking him a question and you recognize there's a pattern of turnover and, of just toxic behavior, and this thought leader is either oblivious to it or wants a change but doesn't know how. If that leader is listening to this podcast, where is the first stone? Where do we turn the first stone? Where is the first step? Because every journey begins with a step. Where do you start?
So, by the way, I think you had 4 of 5 questions in there. So I am happy to tell you what the question I heard and give an answer, unless you want to,
It's okay.
Let's paint a scenario.
Okay.
Let's say that we'll give you an interesting example. We're gonna move a little bit away from. So there could be toxic behavior. A form of toxic behavior is being a control freak.
Okay.
Being a micromanager.
Okay.
Right? That's a great behavior. So a great behavior to focus on. So what's interesting is the first thing that needs to happen is recognition. Hey, this is really a problem that I have. And what typically happens, a peer or superior is going to come to them. Now, in some cases, if it's the CEO, the board's going to say something. That means it's pretty intense. If it's part of the C-suite, it's sometimes the CEO or the HR, the CHRO, who will say something. And it typically, unfortunately today, it typically happens in the annual review cycle. Now, I think the annual review cycle is archaic because life happens on a daily basis. So if there's something going on and it makes sense to focus on, one of the easiest ways to do that up front is to do what's called a 360. And that is have a coach or a firm come in. Now you could do it electronically. I prefer to do it by talking to the peers. And you want to talk to a couple people above, a couple people below, a couple people at the peer level. And that happens anonymously. And the fun conversation, I'm going to really say the fun conversation, is a fun conversation that the coach that I would have directly with the individual. Because if you're going to hire someone like me, or if you're going to hire a coach, you want to hire somebody you trust. And you want to hire somebody that in a sealed container of trust, you could tell the truth. Right? And in terms of telling the truth, it's simply, listen, talking to all your staff, seeing the results of your operations, you are a micromanager. Right? Do you think that being micromanager is good or bad? Right. And then if the person says, yeah, I've known that my entire life, I don't know how to fix it. The next most important question is, do you want to? Because a coach can't change anybody.
Yeah.
A coach can't change nobody could change anything in somebody else.
Right.
It's somebody else who has to say, I want to change.
Right.
So the answer to that is yes. One of the coaching degrees and methodologies I have is called stakeholder-centered coaching. And so there are 5,000 certified stakeholder-centered coaches. We all, and I'll say for me, I can guarantee that if there's a particular behavioral change that you want to be seen as having addressed, I can guarantee that in a 1 year period, everyone will say you've changed. Now, change will happen along the way, but I will guarantee it happens that you will no longer be considered by your peers a micromanager, if that was the case,
Right.
After a year.
So the element of wanting to change and wanting to do something is very important. It breeds the same for any behavior anybody has that has been identified. Everybody around you can identify something until you identify it and want to do something about it, then there's no locus of change. So to be applied. So is there anything that was very common that you found among the 500 people that you interviewed?
I think the biggest common factor was, I guess there were two, but it started off with lack of clarity. 98%. So here's what I would do if somebody, and by the way, you could only do 500 interviews and still maintain, your full-time position if you put structure and process in place. And that's something I learned when I was, in college and just continue to focus on. And if somebody said yes to the interview, I would send them a 16-minute video to prepare, to look at ahead of time and say, hey, here are the 5 questions. Here's how you prepare to the 5 questions. And the first question was the question associated with clarity. And so I would say, this is how you prepare for this particular question. And 98% couldn't prepare. Either some of them didn't do any research. We never did the interview. Of all the 500, it probably was overall to get to 500, might have been 600. I can't remember how many people didn't show up. But of all the people I interviewed, there was only one person who was able to do it without, if they didn't prepare, they could do it without actually having a little bit of tutorial and then coming back another time after preparing. And what was interesting to me of the 500 is they didn't get it either because they didn't prepare, or they were stuck with the marketing cookie cutter approaches that existed. Right. So I will tell you can I tell you about what that first question is? Probably the most important, right?
Yes.
So the skill set that I've built, and it was probably a download that I was given, is being able to allow any company or any human to articulate where they are executing on their purpose in less than 10 words. That level of clarity is powerful.
Right.
And so I'll share with you the formula. And the reason I feel comfortable sharing the formula, first of all, I would like more people to have clarity, but I could also say, based on the study, that I shared the formula with 500 people and 98% still got it wrong, right? So the phrase, or what I call is, the acronym is called CPoP, 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 and it stands for your customer point of possibilities. So the first question I'd always ask is, what's your CPoP? Right? What's your customer point of possibilities? And the formula is consisting of two pieces. First, who do you serve?
Okay.
Right? And typically 1, 2, or 3 words. Now, a lot of people would come in and say, well, I serve, we'll give it a specific thought later. I serve speakers, authors, TEDx speakers. Yeah, I mean, by the time they're done, it's 15 words and you forgot what they started talking about, right? So 1, 2, or 3 words. So it's the who. Now, here's the thing that really catches people a lot. From the perspective of your client, what is the pain point that they're experiencing that they want to get over? Or what's the pleasure point, right? And I have not run across any situation. Matter of fact, it was so funny. Twice today, I've given two CPops to people who already had them. Or, sorry, I'm putting up my double quotes, already thought they had them. Oh, I know exactly who I am. Here it is. And then I said, well, would you mind if we spend a little bit of time?
Right.
And I was able to bring down like 9 words to 4, and they go, oh my God. And what's interesting to me is when somebody gets clarity,
Right.
what the CPoP truly represents is the frequency at which your body is resonating. Right? Because if it's how you're executing on your purpose today, and you are a credible human, you are of service to others. So the question is, who do you serve? And either what is their pain point or pleasure point?
Right.
And if you can articulate that in less than 9 words, all of a sudden you have a great compass in which to look at the world. And that's what I love giving that to people. And more importantly, I like them turning their compass into a magnet, because it clearly is a good way to attract people to you when they know with clarity who you serve and how you serve them.
That is so great. It's got me thinking too. I think just in the mechanical way of the way the corporate world is structured, or the way our world is structured, we become task oriented as doers, right? And seldom step back, to kind of like, okay, look at the whole picture. Like, who is affected by my action, right? We've become a line item society, right? As opposed to effect of our action, in a sense. So the CPOP analogy and the CPOP practice actually gives a person an instant to step back and really analyze the why behind their action, the why behind what they do, that they engaged in. So did you meet a thought leader who was so rigid in your thinking that there was no way breaking through that CPOP the CPOP was not readily defined in a short amount of time? It took some work to define that.
I have 2 stories. We'll start with the most immediate question. So it turns out that one of my friends and business partner, we've done some work together,
Right.
is super high Mensa, super high IQ. By the way, there's a correlation. The higher the IQ, the lower the EQ, but super high IQ. And he came in. It was one of those when somebody would come in, and I don't think he prepared the first time, because super high IQ people don't need to prepare.
Right.
So, sorry, that's a joke because that's not true. And the thing that's interesting is he came in that first episode. I scheduled. It was a really interesting process. I will answer your exact question. I ended up doing it Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and I talked to 10 to 12 people each day. And I'm one of those humans that I get energy from conversations. It's not a depletion,
Right.
particularly if if I can affect the life of somebody for the rest of their lives by giving them clarity. Oh my God, I go crazy in a really good way. So a lot of times what I realized is in the first 10 or 15 minutes, as we would go through the questions, if it just didn't sound right, I would make the following statement.
Right.
Very similar to what you did. What you did when we came on is, hey, Mitchell, listen, we can either just talk to each other and learn if you want to do the episode with me,
Right.
or if we like each other right away, we could figure out how to jump on the episode, right? And so that's what I would do. Somebody would come in and I'd ask the question, and about 15 minutes into it, I go, I think we're at this stage where that if I interviewed you, I just don't think you're going to be happy with how the interview turns out.
Right.
Do you mind if we reschedule? And for the next 15 minutes, why don't we talk about you? Like, nobody would say no to that. Now, 20% of the people didn't reschedule. Right. So once again, those are one of the things I analyzed, right? So this guy came in, a guy by the name of Lucas Root. We rescheduled. He came back the second time. He gave me a CPoP, loved the CPoP, and it wasn't him. It took 3 months before he was able to unravel all the marketing cookie cutter stuff that was part of his makeup before we really dialed down to his proper CPoP, which he's also then changed.
Okay.
But it's the thing that's interesting is if you're full of living your life the way the world expects you to live and the rules that they send, what happens is we sometimes are living somebody else's life, which is what he was doing.
Right.
So it does happen where people, first, they weren't ready in the first interview. Mm-hmm. Second interview was great. He came back 3 months later, said, Mitchell, I got to pay you. Let me do another interview. And I want to do it again. And so we were able to get it that next time. But not everyone is smart, high IQ. Not everyone's smart enough or allows their ego to be vulnerable enough to recognize that they need to, that it wasn't really them.
I like that. The ego is the one thing that trips a lot of people up because I've done it this way all these years and it's worked. What do you mean it's not me? What else do you want? Right? And it really does stunt a person's growth. It's something that I strongly believe most leaders will benefit from recognizing when ego gets in the way of leadership, effective leadership. Because people are either grandfathered into a role, ordained into a role, for better way to say it, without really having the appropriate tools to actually lead in that role. And, a lot of leaders, I've also experienced them, have this, a cliquey grade school mindset, right? Where they bring their personal relationship into leadership and they wonder why the team is falling apart. They wonder why nobody is taking them seriously. Well, you're not an effective leader. How about you step back and then, what am I doing as a leader that is sending out this energy or is sending out this repellent, in a sense, where nobody can be honest with me and where nobody really sticks around? So, ego. So, brings me to my question. You said 20% did not rebook or reschedule. Why do you think that is?
Oh, it's a great question. And this is me speculating, so I can't really tell you because that's them. Some people wouldn't reschedule because they forgot, or they ran out of time, or they didn't see it was important, or they didn't think it was important to them. I like getting questions that I haven't been asked before,
Right.
And that is definitely one of them. So when I'm sitting with CEO for a company, or if I'm sitting with a business owner and they get their CPoP and it represents who they are. They are, maybe for the first time of their life, they're aligned. Because if I can articulate in words, all I'm doing is listening. I'm not making stuff up. If I can articulate in words the frequency the person vibrates at, all of a sudden, oh my God, that's amazing. They're in line. Now, here's the crazy part. 90% of the time, that person will get out of alignment somewhere between 2 hours and 2 weeks. Kind of like if you go to a chiropractor.
Right.
Sometimes first time it works. Other times the behavior that brought up the bad vertebrae, the bad alignment comes right back and it doesn't stick, right? So what happens is that 90%, it's because society is trying to, not necessarily on purpose, but trying to get them out of alignment. And they do. So it's quite possible that 20%, that didn't show up, some of them could be, hey, listen, I don't believe in clarity and credibility, and I don't need to talk on the show. And so, because I got everything I need, I have more than enough clients today. I don't need to learn or do something else. That could be.
Right.
I'm speculating.
Very possible. Very, very possible. So for the 500 that you interviewed and worked with, when it comes to clarity and alignment and credibility, right? Yes, you were working with these thought leaders on their career front, in a sense. Did you find that this also was helpful in their personal lives? Being a credible person, having clarity on when to replace your roof. Do you absolutely have to replace your wood floors? Do you have to take your wife's consideration or your husband's input into consideration? Do you have to listen to your kids more? Do you find that they had a different lease in life and, in the way that they saw things, not in the cookie cutter approach, but maybe I could see this in another angle. Did that ever come up?
No.
Okay.
It didn't come up directly, and I'm going to focus on empirical evidence of what what I was able to observe afterwards.
Right.
So, in so many different ways. So for me, it changed me forever. Right. So I say for me, yes. For other people, I'm going to say, and now I've actually worked with over 1,000 companies and individuals, and it immediately works on 10% of the population.
Okay.
Right. And it's when somebody who is a DIYer, a do-it-yourself person, gets in alignment, they see it, they feel it, they know what it is, they're off.
Right.
They don't need to be told what to do. And I could see it in their eyes.
Right.
It's so cool because they're calculating in their head, oh, all my go-to-market needs to change, how my website looks, how my social media looks, how I interact with it. Like I could see it going to, I go, what are you thinking about? Oh, I got to change this. That happened of the two, actually it happened both times this morning. Unusual, by the way. And so I see that. And then when I catch up with them like a half year or a year later, like the thing is, none of those, I wasn't doing this to make money. I was really literally doing research. Now, by the way, I probably should have put in something that was a nice recurring revenue stream afterwards, but that's not the research I did. And so for the 10%, they get it. For those that actually work with me, so clients, I see a lot of change. But let's talk about Mitchell. I said it earlier. For me, I considered on time being when I got in a room. If we had a meeting, I was 5 minutes late, I was on time because I showed up. That was prior to the interviews. I am now someone who is always on time by being early.
Right.
And that's unusual, right? So it's like, because what happened is I equated it. I gave it significance. Credibility is the quality in which we're trusted, known, and liked.
Right.
Part of being liked is showing respect. If I'm coming late to a meeting and not showing respect, there's a word I created called cred crud. Cred crud are the things that you do that could potentially hurt your credibility.
Right.
So when I look at somebody's website and the copyright is wrong at the bottom, cred crud. If I look at lots of spelling mistakes, cred crud. If I look at somebody who continually pronounces somebody's name wrong even after correction, cred crud. It's not necessarily completely wiping out your your credibility, but why introduce crud into a relationship, for instance, like coming late, when it's so easy to fix?
So talking about likability and crud, right? The people that wholeheartedly believe, leaders, that is, that they don't have to be liked by people who report to them. And, they practice crud in a way that is so obvious and so evident, right? That the people that report to them are disgusted by it. But they continue in that pattern because, what are you going to do about it? So a leader like that, what is the remedy? What can you suggest?
I'll give a generic response to that, but we would need to talk very much specifics and probably do it when we're not recorded if there's a particular leader to talk about, right? So happy to take that one offline.
Right.
One of the problems is that we are living in a world where many of the leaders were taught how to lead by being command and control.
Right.
They were taught to lead by saying, you shout, and those that work for you will follow. Jump and you say how high. What happened is we were living in a bubble of time that all of a sudden we got to hit a pattern interrupt. That pattern interrupt was COVID. And I'll give you an example of my cousin. I won't give her name, but my cousin lives in Long Island, and she was happy for years. I didn't even think about a 2-hour commute from Long Island to Manhattan.
Right.
Every day. 4 hours a day. Every day. For decades of her life. And if you were living in that part of the world, a 1-hour commute would be small. 1.5 hours is okay. 2 hours a little bit on the long side.
Right.
But it was okay. Oh, how's the commute? Does it suck? No, I get so much done. In the morning I get caught up on my sleep. In the afternoon I get to do all this other stuff.
Right.
COVID happened. First 3 months she still wanted to go into work. But now when you say, hey, you want to go back and work? Oh my God, no. Once a month is enough. Right?
Perspective.
And it's a pattern interrupt.
Right.
So what happened is the ability for people to work remotely, if you don't really need to be there, you can.
Right.
Companies haven't figured out how to manage, how to make that happen. The same is true with leadership. Leadership in the command and control thing is, I have the title, you will follow. Leadership in the world where, and this is one of those things that are happening with democratization, large companies may not need to be run by a lot of people.
Right.
Because you now have AI that will take up some of the people headcount. That's a different issue. So what happens if you have people on your team? They're there because they want to be there. Why do they want to be there? Because you're leading, not ordering. And so we were shown a amazing pattern interrupt, and so many people came back. So those people who came back from COVID and immediately wanted to go back to being ordered around and be part of the marketing cookie cutter stuff. That's not the audience I'm speaking to here. Speaking to the audience who came back and goes, yeah, things don't seem right. I don't want to do things this way. Or if you're in a leadership position, it's now time to change. It's now time to change and lead the way the current generation, particularly post the younger generation and the generation post pandemic. It's that generation who has a good example are so many of the young people who I've met. My son's 26, so many of his friends, they have a job. I'm going to put double quotes again. They have a job that HR has identified and the manager has identified. This is 8 hours of work. However, with the productivity tools at their fingertips, they get it done in 2 hours.
Right.
So what happens with the other 6 hours? And I have to tell you, management does not know how to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think management in that sense has to come into this generation, because generationally the workforce is changing. Generationally, what used to be mundane is now, quick. Thank goodness to, tools are available to do those tasks. But also, companies should also pay attention to the leaders, to feedback, especially companies who profess to ask for feedback, right? Pay attention to those feedback, pay attention to what is going on. And not everything is gossip, not everything is chatter. I believe everybody's coachable. I believe you can teach an old dog new tricks. I believe in common human decency and grace. I believe in all those things.
I love that. We need more. We need more humans like you. Agreed.
It can be extended. Grace can be extended, and it should be a two-way street. That people that do disappointing things, and I shake my head and wish them well. But be a leader where somebody emulates you. And I am thankful that I have been able to, be myself where people admire a thing or two, right? And that is what drives me. How would I have wanted a person in this position to be? I have to be that for somebody, right?
Yep.
And also my past experiences has also shaped that, right? Where I am conscious not to repeat certain things that pigeonholed me or made me feel a certain way, right? So thought leaders of any capacity, mid-level, upper management, whatever it is important to create room to have those conversation and those honest conversation, bar your personal relationship with whoever, to be an effective leader. Mitchell, I don't know if I said anything that resonated with you. I would like for you to please add to that or correct me.
I'm just going to say yes, yes, and yes. Thank you for that. You got me thinking about something that I haven't really spent a lot of time talking about, but this level of conversation is different than many. So
Right.
Appreciate you being present.
Thank you.
Imagine now if the CPoP concept really works. It's the vibration that you resonate in.
Right.
Now imagine you do it for a company. So if the leader, and I'll give you an example, one of the calls I had yesterday was a firm that they took 70 of their managers. They spent 2 days doing a strategic conference, mission, vision, values, all that stuff. And when we were done, nothing new. Think about how much that cost.
Right.
70 leaders, 2 days, flying in and out, hotel, all of that. So I sat with the CXO, and in 10 minutes, we came up with a CPoP. And he goes, "Oh, that's really good." So imagine now there's an overarching playground that the firm plays in, because the problem is there's all this marketing cookie cutter stuff on how to do things in life. Who's the customer? Who's the client? Who do we serve? How do we serve them? How do we get people excited? How do we get momentum going? And when a leader typically sits with or even dictates down at a 50,000 person organization, here's what we stand for, the words are so convoluted and the words are so big, nobody even understands it. If you could say there's a playground we play in, it's less than 10 words. Now, you're empowered to play in that playground.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to let you do what you need to do. And that playground is slightly altered based on the division and what function, like if finance serves internal versus external with the ultimate goal of empowering the external, right? So the thing that's interesting is we not only need to throw out ideas like we need to physically be in the job. In some cases you do.
Right.
We also need to throw out the ideas of what was important in the past, right? And to me, the simplicity of articulating a playground and then as an employee, is this a playground I want to play in?
Right.
Because lots of the younger generation today not only wants to work and get paid for it and get appreciated,
Right.
they expect a much more pat on the back. Great. They also want to add value to society.
Right.
And so part of the playground needs to say, this is how we're, in less than 9 words, you could still articulate how you are giving back to society. So that's where I'm actually actively looking for. Essentially, I'm looking for those Inc. 5,000 CEOs who want to lead the future with, and I call it executive gravitas, right? So if you think about someone on the Inc. 5,000 list, it means that their companies were one of the 5,000 fastest growing companies.
Right.
And what you might often ask yourself, did they get there because they were good, or did they get there because they were lucky? Okay. In many cases, it was lucky, but that doesn't matter. What really matters is what are they going to do going forward so they could A, potentially stay on the list, and B, stay in business. And for me, I think I'll give you the elements of what's important. A, they need to be living in gratitude.
Right.
If you're a leader living in gratitude, you're not going to do command and control. That doesn't make sense, right? Additionally, if you're a leader living in gratitude, you need to service more than the one stakeholder called your investor. So there are three others: your customers, your employees, and your partners.
Yes.
And so that's the area that I'm addressing right now, and I'm looking for a company to play with. And to me, everything's about play, right? If you're having fun, you're making money, and you're playing, geez, what's better?
Never worked a day in your life. That is
exactly.
Yes.
And so I'm looking for that Inc. 5,000 CEO leading the future with executive gravitas, and they're looking for what that means and how to move forward. And it means redefining the craziness that consultants and coaches of the past have thrown in a place of doing all this stuff that gets so convoluted that if you're 2-3 levels down, 8 levels down in an organization, you have no idea what the company stands for. You're just getting a paycheck.
Right.
That needs to change. I think it's really simple, but it does require throwing out the old and bringing in a new.
So how steep is this hill that you are embarking on?
Huge. So, by the way, I have a tactical solution that will be along the way, but the best example, I'll do it by analogy.
Okay.
I was working for Sun Microsystems. That was the company that brought along, really helped shepherd in the internet. And I left in 1997 during the dot-com days. And during the dot-com days, I remember being quoted in newspapers and magazines around the world when AC Nielsen did their first survey to show that there were 50 million people on the planet using the internet. And that was, oh my God, that's real. This is really going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's when I started my consulting biz. And I would go around to CEOs, VP of operations, and I would say the following: do you realize there's this new technology coming? It's going to allow us to talk directly to our customers. It will allow our subcomponent manufacturers to drop ship directly to our customers. I have to tell you, I was physically kicked out of the offices of 2 companies.
Wow.
Because the internet was just a fad.
Okay.
It feels to me that we're in that same level of transition. There are people who just don't believe that the world is changing. They want the world to go back to the way it was.
Yeah.
And so it is a battle. So I'm looking for those progressive leaders who know that how things were done in the past is not how things need to happen going forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great conversation. Great conversation. Lots of gems. I learned a few things. And please, whoever is listening, if you happen to be a leader in an Inc. 5000, or you do know somebody who's a progressive leader who wants to explore the idea of doing better or learning better or affecting the world in an impactful way, please reach out to Mitchell. We are going to include everything Mitchell in the show notes. So his website, how to contact him, his socials, all of that great stuff. So whoever is interested, a leader in whatever capacity, reach out to him. We all can learn something. We all can improve. We all can be better humans.
I'll give you more. I normally encourage people just to go to my website, mitchelllevy.com.
Right.
And what I'll say is the short term, what I'm doing webinars on how to get the referrals we need. And then in particular, how to make money and do business on LinkedIn. And so that's one of the short term, that's one of the programs that will fund these other programs, because I've been on LinkedIn since before LinkedIn was making money.
Sure.
I was asked by Reid Hoffman and Konstantin Gerlich to actually publish LinkedIn's first book.
Wow.
And so I am now helping business owners navigate and use LinkedIn to drive business and to make money.
Nice. Yep, folks, you heard it here. Reach out to him. It is a time to evolve. Make sure you do some grow. We are not meant to be stagnant. We are not meant to be, fixtures, right? We're natural living beings. Trees grow, you should grow too. Try. Grass grow, you should grow too. Learn something, grow, change your habit, re-examine, step back, see where you're getting in the way of your own progress and growth. It is very important. So I was going to ask for last thought, last feedback, but you already nailed it with the...
Sorry. Yeah, that was one thing I wanted to make sure we got in, and I just...
I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
But if you actually leave us with something, Mitchell, right? If a leader is listening to us talk today, they're grappling with trying to make a change, and it seems far-fetched, given the state of the world today, or at least within the United States. What is the word of encouragement, wisdom, whatever you want to call it, to whoever may be listening and, eager to be a better human?
Thank you for that. Identifying your frequency, who you are and how you show up in the world, and being able to echo that so that you can actually be a leader and people want to follow is, I'm going to say, not easy, but it is very, very simple.
Right.
And if you start by really understanding who you are, and by the way, if you're a leader and you're in the wrong company, then you got to move. But if you're in the right spot,
leave,
and you're doing get out, right? You're in the right role, you're doing the right thing. Right. If you could understand who you are, get your CPoP, get that level of clarity, it's going to be so much easier for people to follow you. Have a compass that will allow you to just make decisions, and then to allow your people to make better decisions. And so many times I've seen the simplicity of that work.
Right.
It is never easy, or sometimes it's easy, but most of the time it's hard work.
It is.
But it's really simple, and you'll get this mental mindset that will allow you to be not only a good leader, but also a good human. And that feels good at the end of the day. At the end of the day, when you're in the hospital bed, and you're asking yourself, what would I do differently if I did my life differently? It's never make more money, more time with friends, more time with family, treat the people that work for me better.
Right. It's you're so right. It's never about the material things that, or the power that we so gravitate towards, especially in a work environment, is usually coming down. It usually comes down to interaction. Could I have been a better person? Could I have been more graceful, loving, forgiving? Right? So it usually comes down to those things, and try. It is not easy. However, if you're looking for support, there are other like-minded leaders around the world that you can gravitate towards. LinkedIn is a great community, right? There's always somebody in your niche or in your ecosystem that can support you. And, if you look hard enough, if you vibrate hard enough or high enough, it will align for you. I am a firm believer in that. So thank you, Mitchell, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please let us know what you think. Comment, interact. We really want to hear from you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mitchell.
Thank you.
Take care.
What a pleasure. I so enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Abeg Vex podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It really helps us out. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the discussion. So join us on social media or drop us a message. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and keep pushing the boundaries of your world.